In today's fast-paced real estate landscape, success demands more than surface-level expertise. It requires insight, adaptability, proven strategies, discipline, and the ability to take risk. The Agent Brew podcast blends candid conversations with wisdom from industry leaders who've walked the path before you. Think of us as your strategic pit stop to fuel your real estate journey. From the crossroads in the world in the heart of Times Square, welcome to the Agent Brew, a podcast that percolates real estate insights. I'm your host, Eric Zollinger of Realty Co. Welcome to our viewers and listeners. This week's episode of the Agent Brew is one for the books. I'm very excited to have on the show talking about her real estate journey, how she's navigated the ups and downs. Managing Director from Douglas Elliman, founder of the Katzen team. Welcome, Frances Katzen.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Fran,
nice to see you.
It's so good to have you here. It's honestly a big moment for me to have you join this podcast. I know you have your own podcast, and I haven't told you this, but whenever I said I was going to do a podcast, I wanted it to have the essence of your podcast because I just thought it was so well done and thought out. I'm doing mine on a shorter basis, so it's not long episodes, but just know I've always been a fan, and we're so happy to have you here.
Wow. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
So, Fran, I always like to have people start with, what would you say your elevator pitch is today for your company or for your team? Who do you represent? What do you specialize in? The markets? How big is your team? What is that snapshot of who you are?
If I'm going to be an independent contractor, I want to be with the 100-pound gorilla. And so to me, market share and out of the box thinking is really my jam. And I found when I left Corcoran and I started at Douglas Elliman, this became a forefront for people to stay individual. The elevator pitch is that we are specialized in entry market, relocation, and luxury, and we also specialize in new development. I spend a lot of time spending money to make money, which is the art of differentiation. That's basically it.
So then would you say that your team, the Katzen team, is a direct kind of reflection of Douglas Elliman as a whole company?
Yeah, it's essentially a microcosm.
Okay, great. And so when did you start your team originally? And then what is the size today and what markets are you in?
I started in 2006 in brokerage. And I essentially backed into a team by simple virtue that I didn't have the skills to do certain things. And those things were typing, because I had been in a prior career that did not require any office work. And then I was also not very comfortable with board packages. And I had a very strong buyer's agent who didn't have a lot of business, but had the skills that I didn't. And so it kind of aligned. In 2006, 2007, I had maybe 2 people. 3 was sort of a mentor, and then it just grew. And now we're probably between 8 to 10 on average, depending on the year.
Wow. And the markets, are you just here in Manhattan, or is it the 5 boroughs?
It's a great question. It's slowly grown. We've gone from New York City specific to Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, Miami. We are now there, and the Hamptons.
That's great. And so I guess you started the team, and you're in all these other markets. You're also doing new development. You're doing resales. With that, over your time, you mentioned that you came from another career. So does that mean you already came with a book of business? Is it something, it wasn't in office, but we're all about our relationships here. And so I just want to start off with, how did you start into real estate? What was that, your career prior? Did that help you? And then that sets the stage for how you brought your success.
Okay. So I was a ballet dancer. I moved to New York to join the New York City Ballet School. And I got really injured when I was dancing with Miami City Ballet as a soloist. It ended my career. During the tenure of when I was dancing, I had an off season, meaning we had time off. And my family was invested in real estate in Australia. And I had another brother who was an architect. So I went and got my license, but I never did anything with it just because I was told that I was really good at design and I had a good eye and you should really get your license, blah, blah, blah. Never did anything with it. And upon the injury, I'm like, okay, now might be a good time. And I basically lied. I called Corcoran and I said I wanted to be someone's assistant and I'd be a great assistant. And I flew from Miami with a boot on my foot and met with 6 teams and basically said I loved it and I could do everything. And of course, that wasn't honest because I couldn't type. I bought the typing for dummies or computer for dummies. I was looking at everybody else how to turn on the computer. It was hilarious. And they looked at me and they said, you are possibly the worst assistant we've ever had, but you'd be a great broker. And that's how it started. And that's it. It took off. I got my first listing. It was a $3 million listing. And that's it. I went after everything. It was a friend of mine who had it. And then it just started. I didn't have any connections from my prior career. There's no money in ballet. You do it because you love it.
And this is why I wanted to have you on Agent Brew, because we're all about talking about the insights that how have some people reached their success. And you're somebody that came in, you didn't grow up here. You didn't start in an industry that had anything to do with what you were doing. It was basically the direct opposite because ballet people don't have money. So it's not like you just slid right into, and also the work ethic. I mean, that is the only thing that I think that is in common, right? Is the amount of hours that you have to put in and the hard work for one. And you hadn't even done anything with real estate. And so you're starting here in 2006. It blows my mind every time that I'm like, what must have been going through your mind? Because when you say you're a ballet dancer, a ballerina, and you didn't even grow up in this country. So that takes, it's God-given, right? It's that motivation inside that keeps you going. So you talk about having your family in design and an architect, and you being a ballerina is all about creativity. And why real estate? Like that doesn't necessarily make the connection.
I wanted to do the complete antithesis of the arts. I was tired of being under the thumb of one person who decides my fate. If they like you, if they like your dancing, it's all subjective. You get promoted. I was a soloist and I was tired. I was injured. And I didn't want to be a Pilates instructor. I didn't want to be a yoga instructor. I didn't want to get married and just have 50 kids. I wanted something else. And I wanted to be a businesswoman, but real estate provided me an opportunity to get into a transactional space where I could create. At the time, I just wanted to learn something new. And I thought this was really very interesting to me. But at the same time, it was the complete opposite in terms of you don't speak in ballet. You grin and bear it. Here it was sort of like negotiation. You create a vibe out of nothing. You can reinvent something. You can change the way it's seen. You can reposition it. It's how you speak to it. It was all about a different communication and a contribution in a different way. And it paid, which was great.
Well, I
Not
mean,
right
it wasn't
away at all.
right. I was just about to say, so, you came into this career and you found an early success that kept you going. It sounds like.
So it was a very interesting entry into it. I hadn't had any experience, and I didn't know what I was doing at all. But I knew people, I liked people, and I wanted to understand everything. So I was like a sponge. And remember, there was no streeties.
Right.
So you showed an apartment, you were the authority, which meant you were a gatekeeper to some level of them getting information, which made you more important in the transaction.
I just want to point out to the rest of the country, while you all have an MLS, we technically don't have an MLS here in Manhattan, but we operate in the same way that we are part of a trade organization. Ours is REBNY. And so you have to abide by their rules, and we do co-broke everything. So that information is, it's not always 100% correct on the websites, but you're right. There was no Zillow in 2006 or StreetEasy. So you were here, did you have a support team here? I guess New York's a tough city. And if you weren't here, to grow up or family?
Fear is a very important motivator. I had no parachute. It was either I was going to make it or I was going home to Australia and probably land up working in a sandwich shop. I have no idea. You don't have any skills when you're a dancer. All you have is great memories and ugly feet, but you don't actually get any type of, degree like you do in law. And I was 30 grand in debt. So when you have debt and you have no other recourse, you hustle. I worked until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night for the first 4 years. I had no dependence at that time. It was just me. And I remember people always saying, "Oh my God, you're a workaholic. You'll never have a life."
One of the things that have always drawn me to you, Fran, even before I knew who you were, is that you had this incredible, impeccable work ethic. And it's just like you never took no for an answer. You wanted to find out as much information as possible. And when we're talking 2006, I was literally just starting at the related companies. We're talking about an entire year where, under the Bloomberg administration, Manhattan was unlike it's ever been because you had new developments sprouting up every single week. You had to learn all this new stuff. So it was a moment in time that a young person with motivation and will and determination had more information than the people that had been here for 20, 30 years. They didn't understand new development. For a young person to come in and speak from authority, I mean, it literally speaks to you through and through. So it's no question in my mind why you did so well. Um, in that time period, were there any mentors that you specifically worked with or from?
I drove my managers nuts because I just was learning all the time. I literally would get up, run to the office and say, "Okay, they just said this. Now what do you do?" And they'd look up and go, "Then you do this." "Right, got it." Come back. "Right, I did that. Now they did this. Now what?" And I did this for probably 4 years, 3 years. I learned everything. I learned the art of when not to do. So the mentors were the managers that we had, and Douglas Elliman have great managers. They have people who are really boots on the ground. And I was asking everybody, and everybody was really, kind. They could see I remember the office manager, I was so anxious. She looked at me and she goes, "Honey, it's gonna be okay. Breath." And then 3 years later, she's like, "You see that woman? That's how you should sound." She was so cute. So they watched me. They watched me graduate.
It's fascinating because I started at Corcoran too as an assistant. There were no teams back then. So you learned by just being in the office and hearing everybody's phone conversations because it's all open air, and you quickly learn who are the movers and shakers, and you just want to be near people and emulate them or sound like them. And it is osmosis. You will learn things by just being in the office and hearing it. So I love to hear somebody else that had a similar story with you. But also, Fran, you're not afraid to ask questions. In all my years I've known you, ever, even when you think somebody might think, "Oh, she should know that." You never have an ego about not knowing something. You always it's really fantastic. Uh, and it's something from afar I always admire.
You're very kind, Eric. You're one of those people that always was such a pleasure to work with in new development because you were um, so down, so on the level, and you dealt straight, and you were talented, and you were fast, and you were really personable. So you knew how to play to play nice in the sandpit. It could get very intense at times, but I think that's an Australian thing and a dancer thing. And what I mean by that is, in Australia, they have a whole thing about the tall poppy syndrome. So if you're the winner, you're the jerk. If you're the underdog, you're cool. And so you never wanted to be too above yourself. You always kept it in check. Even when people say this stuff to me, I'm like, it's so not how I roll and not how I feel, but it's a marketing thing. And the other, dancing, you cannot stop until you get it right. And it comes at a cost, right? Because the ability to be satisfied with good enough is a very confronting component about the perfectionism that runs as a dancer or any type of person who has that tendency. But I think when people watch my work ethic, it wasn't that I was a workaholic. I felt a certain level of responsibility when somebody gives you the keys to their home and it's an illiquid asset and say, please don't mess this up, get me the highest price you can. You kind of take it on. And I felt very responsible, you know?
Maybe it's because we're both not from New York and we're coming here to one of the biggest, greatest cities in the world. Uh, I just found it to be a differentiator for me is that you just don't act like everybody else. You bring something different to the table. And Donna Puzio, who I did the Caledonia with back in the day, she summed it up perfectly where she said, Eric, you're very different. You look at everybody and you say, oh, they're a good person until they prove you wrong. I look at everybody and I'm like, you're a bad person until you prove me right. So, you need to have both people as part of a team because that rounds out the team and makes everybody better. But I just have to say for you, it's, it was always refreshing for me to work with. And listen, we all can have our difficult times because we're all good at or we strive to be good at what we do. But I find that, you've always been somebody that is driven and you're not afraid to push to get it. And that should be the norm, not the exception. So
there's a lot of denigrating that goes on for people who do well. And it's sad because I'm trying to model it now where you can pay it forward. And it doesn't mean anything other than there's enough for everybody. I think people are sort of surprised. They're waiting for me to be punitive because they expect it based on what they've heard or seen. I don't know. I just think it's okay to win and it's okay to support others that win. And I think for women in particular, it can get very sensitive, I think. I don't know.
Well, supporting women when they win, what is a win that you've had in your career and why is it important to you? Like, why was that a win?
There's been a few. I think for me, the big win was being on Bloomberg News and becoming a regular correspondent. I think for me, the imposter syndrome ran really deep. I didn't go to college. I didn't feel like I was enough, essentially, because I was at a deficit of not having that experience. So dancing at that time was very immersed. You left at 16 and you dance professionally because it's a young profession, and then you retire or get injured, which is exactly what happened to me, and you start your second career. So for me to be on Bloomberg News and to be sitting across from one of the heads of BlackRock talking about, a $3 billion deal was sort of a moment for me where I just sort of took that in. And the other was, being on the cover of a magazine that I didn't expect. Just those moments, or Real Deal saying, Katzen's brought in to sell out the remaining of Alchemy's project. And I thought I was 6 years into my business. And I don't know, there's a couple of moments where you just go, whoa. And you don't even take it in because you're worried that if you do, you'll be a knob. So you just push it away and you're like, no, it's just part, whatever. But if I look back now and I just think, wow, what a moment. Like I get chuffed talking about it right now.
It's great. So the flip side of that is, have you had any transformational losses? Now you did talk about your accident, which we don't wish ill on anybody, but I'm glad it happened when it did because it brought you to us here. What about in business though? Have you had anything that really happened that ultimately pushed you into something good?
That's a great question. Yeah, there were people that I brought into something from a good place of contribution and helping her or bringing someone in and then getting stabbed in the back and set up, and you sort of go, really? Did that just happen? And there's such a rage, you can't believe it. But out of that came some of the most opportunistic moments for me in the new development sector based on that burn. So it was a win, but it was a backhanded win. And it took a little bit of reconciliation in my head. I don't look at anything as a loss. I look at it as an opportunity to shift it. And I think that's the big change. And I think that comes with trusting your value. When you know who you are, you're kind of unmessable with because you're not looking for other people to define you. You've given up the wish that others will see you the way that you would like to be seen. You don't need that anymore. You kind of just like who you are, irrespective of all the imperfection that may happen in our day-to-day with our own behavior. We ultimately essentially know we're good enough, and you stop caring. And in that space, it all shifts.
Well, many have said that, that's why actors and performers make such great real estate people, because they can put up with the rejection, because it's something that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. One could say you were a dancer, you experienced the same thing. But talking about a transformational loss, and haven't had anybody on yet that I could really pose this question. We've all lost projects. We look at Susan DeFranza, her amazing, incredible career. But, just as a baseball player that has all these home runs, you have some strikeouts. And so how do you deal with those strikeouts? And what goes through your mind? Do you dust yourself off, or what's that process?
I don't think you have a choice in the business that we're in. You don't have a choice to not dust yourself off. If you don't dust yourself off, you don't pay your bills. It's really simple. And I think it's what you make it mean. I think it's very easy to make it a self-denigrating. No, I don't think it's a spin. I think you want to know what drove the decision. Meaning, I had a listing. It was a fantastic listing. The partner that owned it didn't like that I had children. And I got fired. They never disclosed it, but I knew what it was about. He didn't like that I couldn't show at the 11th hour. And it didn't matter that I had a partner. It was the feeling that he wasn't getting enough of me. And I got that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's honest. That's what he needed. It was just a moment like, wow, really? Okay. And what did I make that mean? I made it mean that that's not for me. And it's okay. Like, move on. I'm good. So I think it depends. I think, there's a lot of times where you pitch, we win a bulk, but sometimes we don't. And I think it comes down to whether you vibe or whether they feel like you're going to give them enough attention. I think people are always blown away when they see the real agent show up to pitch a $600,000 listing. And I always say to the owner, I'm doomed if I do, doomed if I don't. If I don't show up, it means I don't care. If I show up, it means what's wrong? It doesn't, and I just say, and I say, honestly, this is my bread and butter. It's the same application, whether I'm doing a 10 million or a 600,000, it's going to be the same methodology. And you can rely on me for this, and this. That's it. Be straight.
That's great. Are you, for your team, would you say you are that, you are the person that's training them along the way, that you are that manager, or have you created a team that basically teaches itself and moves up the ranks?
That's a really, it's really coming. My goal is to be there and to be the one that's there for the pitch and the question and the strategy. But what I've found is that some of the agents have taken other agents under and so they guide them a little bit more intimately than I perhaps can do. But it's not done from they feel that that's more comfortable for them in the moment. But I'm pretty hands-on. I mean, I check in, we have meetings, people come to me, my door's never closed. I'm here every day. It's a way to model that I commit to them as much as they're committing to the team.
I've noticed over the years, you have stepped up your exposure game by going on CNBC, Bloomberg, and so was that a constant choice? And using the digital media per se, your content is phenomenal, and it's very pointed, it's very direct, it's intentional, and so with all of that, it's always leading towards something. Has this been part of your big dream? I mean, is this the have you reached a point of satisfaction, or do you want to go bigger?
I am very grateful for what I have done. Like, I never expected this, ever. I didn't even think I would ever get into doing it. And it's taken a lot of practice to not freak out before I go on, because it's extremely scary when you go on a live segment like Good Morning America. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is really 6 cameras back this way, look over here, and try to make it seem natural. Um, I think I am satisfied. I think it's great. And I don't, my goal now is to see if I can create something beyond my own expectations. And more to come on that. I couldn't have asked for, yeah, I don't want to say anything yet until it might happen. And if it does, then I'll send you the note.
Okay. Well, we always like to play the gratitude game, and so I'm going to push at the end when we talk about that bud, what's coming up. So first, we like to talk about two wins: the bud, which we do a little infusion of coffee here. We talk about the aroma, and then the actual cup of brew. So with the aroma, it's that first thing that you smell. It gets everybody ready to go, and so it's kind of what gets you out of bed and motivated. What would you say that is for you?
Making a difference
And making a difference where?
in everything I do, contribution. Because without giving, so this is going to sound so out there and so wuzha, but your gratitude aligns you with a space to create. Without that, you can't have it, in my opinion.
Have you done Tony Robbins?
I did. I did many, many years ago. He's great.
I mean, there's many principles that have the same thing. Everybody has their own little take on it, and
Yes.
so uh, I've I've always been a big proponent of gratitude and just being grateful for everything you have, because you don't know when it's gone, and um, that's why the brew, the second uh, part of the game, um, one could say it's what is your why? Because it's the brew sustains you for a while. So what is the why, and why do you continue on?
I continue on because I have 2 little children that I want to model in the world that you can do it and you can have it all at certain levels. And I also want to make that difference. I think part of what I realize in order to be a happy human being is I need to know that I'm affecting change in the right way for the people around me. I know that sounds really so cliche, but
No,
I went through
it's
hell.
thoughtful.
It is. I've gone through the dark night of the soul on a personal level. And I would say coming through that, I got really clear about what my priorities were and how to get myself through something where I had zero support, both in career and on a personal level. And I think that was the defining moment of, was I going to choose to be on my side irrespective or forsake myself? And I was like, you know what? I'm good to stay on my side. And through that work, I realized that's how it changes. Everything changes when you kind of choose to do it from a different energy. I said it out loud, bloody word, energy.
We all have highs and lows, um, and I can relate because we went through some low times at the same time, not knowing each other. We're going through those times. I do remember it was Art Basel 2022, and we were on the phone. We had just missed one another. But Fran, I just have to say that conversation, it still sticks with me because it, you're a thoughtful person. And in that moment, I knew that like, this is why I like Fran. And, you know, you never give up and you always see that silver lining. And it really is an inspiration. I know for myself and for others that, I don't think we're given more than we can handle, but I think you need to handle it because it's all a muscle, right? And so, um, I can't wait to see your kids get older and just have you be a mother as an older person and how you continue to influence them, which takes us to the grinds, the point of kind of frustration or things that aren't always going your way. The grinds get everywhere, they make a big mess. Is there anything right now that's happening that is causing you that frustration or that thorn from the rose?
Yes.
What
Yes.
is it?
It's being able to accrue and create an ability to not have to grind as hard. I think the world is in a really hard space. I think we are experiencing it and seeing it throughout all countries right now. And I think we're all trying to recalibrate and find a way to not lose hope, because hopelessness is a very scary thing. And I think it's really important for us to sort of really get aligned with ourselves based on that. I think real estate has become a very interesting opportunity in a world that hasn't been very effective over the past couple of months. And ironically, when you have this kind of tension and restriction and imposition and difficulty, people want local and they want a safe asset. And so the rates are coming down and suddenly everybody's going back in. And there are many brokers saying, no, they're pulling back. But now it relates to what you just said. I don't mean to go on a tangent, but it's the people that have the courage to hold on to themselves and go into the real estate sector now against the grain. That will be the titans at the end. And it's the same thing that happened in COVID. People were really like, oh my God, is the world ending? Well, we've just heard all the press, like it's the worst. It's never been this bad. I've been doing it long enough where I've seen enough markets to know that this too shall pass. It'll take time.
Life goes on. And we've come to that point where now we talked about, the low, the frustration. What are you looking forward to? Whether it be in business, is there a new development? Is there a new exclusive that really brings excitement and is that next thing that's going to propel you forward?
I think what I'm really enjoying right now is I'm working with a price point and a caliber of client I've never had access to. And for whatever reason, it's come forward. I've never had that. Not at this point, never like this. And so I'm really enjoying it because it's like what you imagine in a movie. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I've been grinding for so long. I didn't have any rich sugar daddies. I wasn't doing anything to get anything. I did it over time, and you build it over time. It doesn't happen overnight. And we live in an instant gratification culture. And I really believe that, all of these brokerages that promise such fast returns for people who are starting out, they do them a disservice, because until you've worked through each and every part of it, it's really hard to become the master of it. And so the cheap, quick fixes don't actually give them a discipline, a stamina, a capacity. And so my too is to seeing our brokerage find its power again in the fullest way, because I really think we work with some of the best people in the industry, and I'm very lucky to know them.
When we spoke yesterday, which last night were the Ellies, congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
We talked about, companies have highs and lows, and certainly Douglas Elliman is one of the most storied real estate companies of all time out of New York, and they've been bought and sold. I mean, I think more than any other company out there, truthfully. It's just that, you had Howard for the last 20 years as a, very, very much a stabilizer that the company hadn't had for time before. And we talked about, how much you love Elliman, and I've had the opportunity to work at several different companies. And what I've come to realize is, as independent contractors, yes, they're our home, but you need to be around people that motivate you. And so every firm offers something for everyone else. And Elliman wouldn't be the same for you as it is for me. And so I always find people that love their company. I love that, because you should be passionate. You should care about where your home is. And so it really makes me happy to see people like you and our other friends and colleagues that have come up and said, no, I'm staying here. This is my home. I am not abandoning it. And so kudos to you for being part of the new change.
Thank you. I just want to say this. I was very fortunate to work with Howard, and I spent my dues earning my relationship with him through work. And I will say that the new CEO and president, Michael Leibowitz, is a very unusual breed. Although people say, oh, he has never done brokerage, he's done sales. But what sets him apart, I think, is that he came into the space and he genuinely wanted to know everything from all the people in this firm and basically did reconnaissance for a period of 6 months and has asked for input by creating an advisory board, which I don't know any brokerage that does that. He really is catering to cultivating quality. And I think he has done an unbelievable job in turning it around in such record speed. And I think we're going to see a very different evolution, and one that will, I think, allow people to hold with high regard. So I'm very grateful, but also relieved, because we were all like, I don't know. And what we're seeing is a really appropriate growth for a very established company.
We've come to the point in the show that happens to be my favorite, and I'm very interested in learning how you're going to respond to this. But I always like to end an Agent Brew episode by asking, if you could give your young agent self, this is you, not today's young agent, a piece of advice, what would that advice be for a young Francis Katzen in real estate?
You need to know when to not do. You don't have to try so hard all the time. The art of not doing is as powerful as doing.
That is a lesson that was very hard for me to learn. And I think I'm still trying to do that every day.
Me too. Me too.
That's very thoughtful. Well, Fran, we are so grateful to have you here today.
Are you kidding? I'm grateful. I love you. And I'm so happy I got to be a part of this. Thank you.
You know that I've always been a positive, motivational speaker, or I love my quotes. And so John Albino is a friend of ours in common that we absolutely love. And at one point, he just looked at me because I said something. I'm like, oh, yeah, I grew up on Zig Ziglar, and he was my father's favorite. And he goes, I grew up on Zig Ziglar. He goes, oh, my gosh. So in honor of John Albino today, there have been more quotes by Zig Ziglar than anybody else on the podcast. But I thought this one was rather appropriate before we spoke. So what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. Let me say that again. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become from achieving your goals.
Love it. Love it.
So, Fran, that is your quote. I read that. I'm like, oh, this has got to be for her. So
perfect. Nailed it. Of course you did. You're Eric.
Well, Fran, thank you for joining us. We would love to have you come back in another season. We wish you and your whole team success on another great year. And we want to thank all of our viewers and listeners for coming today. I'm Eric Zollinger of Realty Co., reminding you that it's a great day for real estate. The Agent Brew podcast is brought to you by Realty Co. Realty Co. is your partner in real estate, bringing you game-changing benefits and services to empower your business. Visit realtyco.com for more information.